Thank you for watching the Whittemore Community Magazine's Hour of Power Live on Facebook with your host Edward McQueen and April Garner.
Good evening. You're looking to us live. I used to say listening to us.
Still ain't gotten used to this, huh?
Oh man, we have to get used to it. This is a good medium. But we're gonna welcome all of our viewers today. I'm your co-host Ed. I'm your host Ed McQueen. Of course, the moderator, Sister April Garner. And as you can see, we're gonna have some exciting guests today. We got a double dose of April, so beware of that. Double dose, and of course our other special guests. As usual, we want to start off by sending our condolences, and especially this month. I mean, it's been pretty rough month in terms of a lot of tragedies and a lot of passing of some very important people. Well, everybody's important, but some well-known people. And we send all our condolences, our well wishes to people out in Allentown, Burgess, Homewood, North Myrtle Beach, Santee. You can stop me whenever you want to go. Cochran, okay, St. Paul, Little River, Bucksport. Can't forget Bucksport. Long, South Carolina. Gresham, South Carolina. Marion, Anna. Green Sea, Loris, Nixonville, Upper Georgetown, Chapee, Waupee, Lower Whiteville. Even we're on Facebook, so we're worldwide. So we're gonna just corral what we're used to around right now, just the local jurisdictions, including Georgetown, Race Path, Paul's Island, Merle's Inlet. Of course, what's the capital of Conway?
Sugar Hill.
God,
April got it right. Sugar Hill. That's right.
Sugar Hill. Let's get into that.
I love it.
Okay, so today, as I mentioned previously, that we're and if you all have seen the promo, we're just going to assume that you have, since you're tuning in. And we're talking about this ever important issue on the flood mitigation. And one of the areas that was hit pretty hard was the Bucksport area. And we've got Brother Kevin Mishu to kind of herd us in on that area. And he's been attending a lot of community meetings, as well as Councilman Orton Bellamy and an advocacy group, the other April. That's the second dose of April. Okay, so we want to welcome all of you, and we have a host of questions for you. Probably some that we got from the community, and some of the people that are some of our viewers who were listening in, and they chimed in, send us some emails, and some texts. So, April, a number of comments have been developed by namely you, and we'll keep that on hold. But there was also some comments that were shared by the Horry County Rising, which is the advocacy group being represented by April Thomas. Is that correct? O'Leary, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
That's O'Leary. Okay.
April Thomas O'Leary. O'Leary's my
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get it. We'll get it well. And we have some people who two other people who were really working feverishly, and sometimes with April on the issue of flood mitigation. And the focal point has been, which has been hit hardest, was Bucksport. So we'll start with, and if April, unless you had another thought to take, we'll start with Mr. Kevin Minshew, and who can, if he wants to give us a little background on how he's involved and your involvement in the flood mitigation issue in Bucksport, because Bucksport is your home, and that's probably the first reason. Okay, so Kevin, you're on.
Thanks, Edward. I appreciate you for having me on today. You know, Bucksport is one of the areas that have been hit hard with the flooding, and it is the new norm. We need to get used to this, and we need. That's why this conversation.
Let me stop you.
I'm
looking at one side of the screen, but I guess who's on the left over there, and I inadvertently missed out by calling her name Betty Goss. Okay, and Betty, I'm so sorry.
She just entered the stream. She keeps bouncing in and out of the stream. It's okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
She's trying to
Right,
she's trying to get her connection.
As I was saying, Edward.
Yes, sir.
You know, flooding is the new norm. I feel as we try to get used to climate change, we need to expect that this is going to be a part of our lives, whether it be this year, next year, or 2, 3, 4 years down the road. It has to be something that contingency plans need to be addressed, and that's the reason why it's so dear to my heart, because we not only are we seem to be getting the flooding during the hurricane season, but when we have heavy rain cycles, that everything flows downhill. So who's at the bottom of that receiving end is Horry County and places like Bucksport and Saugus T. So and as we know, minority communities are very disproportionately affected by any type of catastrophe. Bucksport is considered a low to moderate income area. So anytime we get this kind of devastation, it has a profound and lasting effect on the community.
And this is true, Kevin. And I think that in some of the in the discussion that you and I had prior to the show, one thing that we talked about that we are going to try to address today is what those effects are. And it's there's a domino effect, as you and I kind of discussed, that wherein people pretty much think that it's just all about the water, the flooding, but there are issues that are underlying issues that are a result of this flooding. And so this is why it's important for everyone to stay informed and to gain as much knowledge as they can about the implications of everything and what exactly could result, not only from just the flood waters coming in, but anything that you have to deal with after the flood and during the flooding. So one of the things that we talked about involves just property in general and how the flooding has affected everyone's property. In the Bucksport community, of course, is one that you're particularly focused on. But I know that, even April and Councilman Bellamy can speak on this as well. The property issue is the biggest issue that people are facing, because they are losing property whenever they actually are in a position to rebuild or refurbish or whatever from previous flooding. Then we have another flood, so it's a compounding issue. So this is kind of the biggest cry that's coming from all of the communities is what do we do in terms of our property? What should be our next step? And there's so much information, so much to consider. We're talking about people's livelihoods and their legacies. It's hard for them to make a singular decision based on one dynamic. And as you all do your work in the county to try and come up with solutions or to discover solutions and bring people to the table for these conversations, what are some of the things that people face whenever they are talking about their property that seem to be kind of the bane of this whole problem with the flooding?
Okay. Go ahead and answer that.
Okay. Yes, you can, Councilman.
Okay, good evening. How's everybody doing?
One of the things that we've been doing is that for flooding, when I came on board in January 2019, is that we address some basic things for us, and we've had several, probably about 5 or 6 meetings in Bucksport in regards to flooding, flood mitigation, flood prevention, in the areas of bringing in the experts there in the community to address, to answer those questions that you're asking today, for as floodwater department, stormwater department, and our engineers. Is that some of the basic things we're doing now? It's and I'd like to thank Kevin and his organization, the Bucksport Improvement Association. We've gone out in the community and working with Tom Roth with stormwater and identifying properties that we do not have easements to. We do have a serious problem with we cleaning up the ditches, canals, in that we found what we discovered that we didn't have access to the property. But we've gone out and thanks to their organization, we have identified all the property owners that we need access to. And Tom Roth and his staff is going out this week and the following weeks to go out, clean out the ditches and canals. That's some of the basic things that we can do right now. But for his home repairs, replacement, I'd like to thank South Carolina Disaster Relief. They've been doing a phenomenal job for his doing repairs. And also with we have a lot of volunteers that came to Bucksport to assist in repairing properties. Some of the highlights will be Walkamaw Foundation, Samaritan Purse, Catholic Charities. And we had several other organizations that came in, donated furniture and things of that nature to assist families to move back in their homes. But one of the areas that for his disasters that after the disaster, and one of the things that we discovered too is that in the Bucksport community, you have a high number of families that have heiress property. And it's very difficult. And we've already had at least 4 workshops from the South Carolina legal authorities that will provide the South Carolina Legal Association that will provide heirs property heirs property workshop seminars and process the probate for the families. We're looking at least 3 or 4 generations back that you might have 2 acres of land with 2 houses on the property. The family members are paying taxes, but they don't own it. So it makes it very difficult when FEMA comes in and you submit an application. They will ask for tax records. They ask for a copy of the deed, and the deed will show an estate versus the property owner. So we are working with the communities in that aspect of doing that, for us to having clear title to the property, and that way they can receive more resources from various different agencies.
Now, Kevin, I'm going to throw this question to you only because you and I have had a kind of a pre-show discussion about it. What are you discovering as far as these conversations that you've had with people in the community? And Betty, you can chime in as well if you'd like. When it comes down to heirs property, what are some of the misconceptions? I'm sure there's some things that people just really don't understand about heirs property.
You're exactly right, April. And heirs property is probably one of the biggest losses of land in the African American community. And here's the reason why. Dad or great-great-grandfather bequeathed to his son property in a statement only. And from generation to generation, each person that dies passes down by word to their heirs that you own this property. Well, what they believe and what the state will authorize is 2 different things. So what ended up happening to add to what Councilman Bellamy was saying is when we have an issue like flooding and FEMA comes in to provide assistance, those people that can't prove a clear title, which is called a clouded title, is then denied those funds to rebuild. Now you're talking about trying to rebuild in a low income area. That's problem number 1. How does a person with the income of below the poverty level put their lives back together when a flood, just an inch of water, the damage that an inch of water can do under your house is more than their annual income. So it is imperative that we understand that having a will is important. That's number one. It costs in excess of up to $10,000 to clear up a clouded title that might have 15, 16. I've seen titles that have more than 45 individuals attached to it, all owning a piece of a 2-acre property. Now, and what happens with that is if one person signs over their rights for whatever meager amount of money, that land could be for sale. And what happens in that is quickly sold, and everybody gets a percentage. So if that land is worth $5,000, you got 45 people sharing the profits of $4,500. So there's so many different problems that's presented when you don't resolve heirs property, but especially in a crisis like a flooding, when you need assistance, that assistance is unavailable to you.
Mm-hmm. April, in your work with Horry County Rising, do you hear of this problem as well throughout Horry County?
Yeah, I mean, I think back to your original point is that if there's already existing issues, right, then these events sort of compound those issues. And you're in the middle of a crisis, right? You're having flood water in your house, you're losing personal things, and it's almost one of the worst times to have to make decisions or have to track down paperwork, documents, and so the more prepared we can be, the better off. We see all the research shows us that the more we understand what our flood exposure is, understanding what our flood risk is, making sure that we're prepared for these events, doing events like this and educating the community and making sure that they're aware of all the different types of things that go into it will help them to rebound much quicker and be more resilient as we move forward. Now, there's certain projects and different things that Councilman Bellamy so articulately talked about that can be done, but that usually that process is many years down the line, right? And so it's really critical that not only do you make sure that you're prepared, but also make sure that you carry flood insurance. You can flood because of a downed tree. You can flood from a stormwater system being, clogged and obstructed. You can flood from a beaver. You can flood from rainfall that falls in our headwaters when we don't have any localized rain here. One of the things that I hear often from many families, particularly families that are moving into the county and haven't been here for generations, they're shocked that they're flooding and we haven't had any localized rain or very little localized rain. And that's because of what's falling in our headwaters. So I think it's really key again. And also, when we do get a flood event, we need to know where the water is. We need to make sure that we understand how high that water is going to be. So it's critical that we have the data that we need, like stream flow gauges, and educating the community to be able to match this local stream flow gauge to their own property when they're having flooding. Making sure that we evacuate when we're told to evacuate. A lot of times people don't realize that if you live in these riverine areas, you're not going to be issued an evacuation order. You strictly only issue an evacuation order based on wind and storm surge. So if you live in a riverine area or in a community like Bucksport that's along the Waccamaw, many people don't understand that they have the possibility of flooding. We hear that often. Tropical storm Bertha just a little over a month ago caught families off guard. They had no idea that they were about to flood, and so they couldn't take those steps to prepare their homes. So those are all really critical things that we need to do a better job educating the community about. Currently, the county is hosting I believe it's a 6-week or 8-week webinar series where they're going to be discussing this as well as other efforts. So, I really can't stress enough, and that's part of the reason why our organization was formed. Beyond that, we need a plan. Horry County Rising has really been pushing for the county to have a flood recovery and a flood resilience plan. We would like to see more efforts or projects put in place where we know exactly what those projects are going to be. We know how much they're going to cost, so we're not throwing good money after bad. We know who's responsible for those projects. We know when those projects can be expected to be implemented. And the Stormwater Advisory Board is putting together a strategic plan to help address some of this. The director for the Stormwater Department, Tom Roth, has been identifying priority projects as part of capital improvements. And then obviously, making sure that we really work with our state representatives, because the reality is we have a lot more unmet needs than we do resources. So right now, the state is putting very little money to this. Congress allocated some funds after Hurricane Florence because that was a presidential declared disaster. So we are going to get some funds, but we're competing with 10 other counties, and nationwide we're competing with 22 other watersheds. So our resources are limited, and we don't have the money. 20% of the federal deficit can be attributed to water damage and flooding. So the reality is that we need to really diversify the revenue that we do have and start allocating it towards recovery and resiliency to meet those needs. But we also need additional funding and be able to work with partners like nonprofit organizations and stakeholders that work in conservation, or to name a few that you all talked about, the churches and some of those nonprofit organizations that are assisting in communities. But really, the idea is you either need to rise or you need to retreat. You can either elevate your home or have your home acquired. Those really are the only two types of mitigation efforts that the federal and state governments are typically where there's funding.
Well, this brings up to date, and you talk about funding. I just this is an update this morning from South Carolina disaster relief, Mr. Duncan, and just to give us an update on some funding here. Hurricane Matthew, there's going to be available 157. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you.
$157 million, and that should be released. Should be available by August 20th of this year, and that's for this wide drainage and infrastructure, pipe infrastructure. The initially $157,000 is for infrastructure. Now, additional funds from Hurricane Florence is that Hurricane Florence. There's going to be, as of October 2020 of this year, it's going to be $72 million for flood mitigation and home repairs. Now, the breakdown is that of the $72 million, 80% of that would be going to the severely impacted counties, which is Horry County, Marion County, and Dillon. And the remaining funds will be going to Florence, Marlborough County, Chester, Darlington, and Georgetown. Out of those funds, and I'll email you this information later. I just received an update. $10 million is for the home buyer program, $3.6 million for administrating the program, $1.4 million for planning, and $56 million will be allocated for repairs and replacement and elevation. And there's going to be there's also $1 million that will be allocated for private owners who have rental properties that rent to individuals to low to moderate income. That should bring you some as April was saying, talking about, is that the series for, let me pull it up here. Okay. The flood mitigation resiliency virtual seminar beginning on July 1st. We encourage everyone to go to this website. The next event will be Wednesday, July 15th. And the subject will be about overview, understanding duplication of benefits and land use strategies. The next event will be July 22nd, Wednesday, July 29th, Wednesday, August 5th, and the final series on Wednesday, August the 12th. So we really encourage everyone in Horry County, please have an opportunity. It's 1 hour through Facebook, through the Horry County website. It's a vast amount of information, very imperative information that will orientate you to flood mitigation. How do you prepare for disasters? I think it's well organized, well orchestrated information. So I encourage everyone to have an opportunity to tune in during those 1 hour seminars.
So I think one of the questions that I have when it comes down to the funding and what's now going to be allocated to help with some of the issues is how are you going to, or how do the agencies determine where the priority areas are? If Bucksport appears to be one of those areas that is in dire need of assistance, what is there an algorithm for that? Does it depend upon the amount of loss, or how do you break down this actual funding to determine who gets
what happens is that you submit an application through Circle Disaster Relief. They have personnel to process the application. They do home inspections. They do evaluation assessment. It's based on need to repair your home or either replace it.
Okay.
Well, maybe that could be done through a workshop or something.
Again?
He actually, so just let me let you know. So South Carolina Disaster Recovery Office actually did submit a plan for public input to basically inform the public on how they were thinking about allocating those funds. And Councilman Bellamy did a great job of explaining how they're breaking those funds up. And we did submit comments. There are some really great national models on how to be able to allocate funds for flood mitigation, and we submitted comments on that plan. And so right now, HUD allocates the fund. This is all from HUD funding. HUD allocates the funds to the state. The South Carolina Disaster Recovery Office is responsible for managing those funds and overseeing those funds. And then they typically will release that to the public on what the application process is. So the county is currently preparing an application to apply for those funds. And they do determine it there's two different factors that they use to determine criteria, whether you're eligible: most impacted and most distressed. So if you have someone that's living in your home that might be disabled, if you're on a fixed income, if you're in a low, moderate income community or from a household, you will get, sort of pushed to the front of the line compared to maybe other families that may be impacted. Also, how many times your home has been impacted and how substantially during each event plays into it. So, for example, statewide, we had $400 million in unmet needs after Hurricane Matthew as far as housing. Statewide, $400 million in unmet needs. There are people that are on a waiting list that will likely be more eligible for these funds based on the fact that they weren't able to qualify after Hurricane Matthew, but possibly flooded again in Hurricane Florence, and now they're considered a severely repetitive flooded loss. So those are the types of situations that would define what is most impacted and most distressed, and who are more likely to qualify. So when you do have the opportunity to apply, you want to make sure that you provide as much information as you can about your household, particularly if you're in one of those most distressed communities or most impacted communities. I hope that helps to answer your question. But there is no algorithm And I certainly do fully expect that the county is going to submit all of this to the public for the public to have an opportunity to give input on how they plan to allocate the funds and the types of projects that they're hoping to do with the infrastructure funds that they'll also get aside from the flood mitigation buyout project.
Well, this one, okay, the most impacted is it? Are we? South Carolina Disaster Relief and Horry County have identified the most impacted areas: Bucksport, Socastee, Longs, and Little River.
And if I can add to that, my heart is always with the little guy, those that are most vulnerable. We've thrown out some very impressive numbers as far as allocations of funding, but bureaucracies work slow. We are still in the process of trying to help those recipients from Matthew. Matthew, of course, was in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
And there's still individuals that have not had their homes repaired.
Right.
So, and the thing is, as impressive as the South Carolina Disaster Relief is, they have a 3-year waiting list. Okay, so what happens to a person that was affected by a flood and they were living paycheck to paycheck?
Right.
Could you imagine what 3 years would mean to them to just get addressed off of the waiting list?
Mm-hmm.
So for me, every form of mitigation is on the table. Councilman Bellamy talked about Tom Roth, who heads up stormwater. He's been very helpful. After, we have gone to him and addressed our problem with Bucksport. We have ditches that go to nowhere. Now, that water comes in and it comes in fast, and we have that problem that's exacerbated by the fact that on the backside of Bucksport, we have one of the largest timber producers in our area. We have Grand Strand Water and Sewer, over 4,400 acres of property back there. In the last 10 years, well, in the last 1 to 7 years, they've cut over 1,400 acres of timber. Now, we know that trees help to absorb water and to slow water down. If you look at the map of Bucksport, the biggest areas is being affected runs right along the edge of that timber property. So not only do we need to talk about ditches that will take water through our community and into marsh areas, but retention ponds. I'm sure April's going to touch on this. That with these buyout programs, they're designed to buy the property, tear it down, and return it to flat land. Nothing is supposed to be planted there. It's supposed to be an area designed to help absorb water. But if that land isn't designed to capture as a basin would, then it's just as useless as it was with the house sitting there. So I'm all for talking to anybody that would listen about flood walls. I know levees, it just kind of diverts water, but at this point in time, where do we get, the Army Corps of Engineers in designing a comprehensive plan that takes the water out of Bucksport or around Bucksport, or retains that water until it can be slowly released into larger bodies? That's where my heart is, and that's what I want to see happen for Bucksport.
Before we get into more of this conversation, I just want to remind our viewers that if you have any comments or questions, please post them to the thread, and we will definitely moderate those questions and make sure that we allow our guests some time to answer those questions or respond to the comments. And we do have a great deal of conversation that's connected to what Kevin just said. But Brother Edward, do you want to take a quick break and then come back and then kind of, because we've got a lot to dig into before this evening is over. What would you like to do at this point?
Yep. We can do that.
You just want to take
We can
a
do
quick
that.
commercial
What
break?
we have a Black History moment?
Okay.
Want to have a Black History moment at that?
That's totally up to you. I'll go to commercial in just a moment, and then we can go into a Black History moment and come back to the conversation. All right, give everybody a chance to get a cool sip of water, because this is a hot conversation.
Oh yeah.
All right. Okay. So
All right.
well, we'll be right back.
Okay, thank you.
Having problems with your vehicle? For quick, prompt, and courteous service, call Snag and Drag Towing. Gregory Graham will make sure that you're taken care of right away. 843-997-0751. That's Snag and Drag Towing Service at 843-997-0751. If you're looking for flowers for any occasion, the Daisy Fair Flowers is here to help you. They offer an enormous selection of flowers, gift baskets, and live plants for delivery in Conway, South Carolina. Serving Conway since 1980, the Daisy Fair Flowers, 1400 4th Avenue in Conway, or call 843-248-7222. You may also visit the web at thedaisyfairflowers.com. Looking for a full-service funeral home with a broad array of services? Look no further than Makiva Funeral Home at 1408 Race Path Avenue in Conway, South Carolina. They offer a wide variety of services, including traditional funerals, memorial services, and graveside ceremonies. You can reach them anytime, day or night, at 843-248-2706. That's 843-248-2706. Makiva Funeral Home in Conway, South Carolina. George L. Williams Jr. is CEO and licensed funeral director. Support the party that supports you. Vote for your own interests and those of your community. The choice is clear. Horry County Democratic Party. Take a stand. Register to vote 2020. This advertisement is paid for by the Horry County Democratic Party. And we are back. Thank you all so much for joining us here on the Whittemore Community Magazine Live. We really do appreciate you being here today. We're going to take just a really quick break. We just did a commercial. We had to acknowledge our sponsors and got to pay the bills. So thank you so much to all of our sponsors for helping us to keep the Whittemore Community Magazine alive. And now we have a moment in Black history with none other than the queen of the McQueen franchise, Sister Joella. Sister Joella McQueen, how are you doing this evening?
Oh, I am blessed and highly favored, as they say. How are you, my beloved sister?
I'm doing just fine, and I'm glad to have all of our guests here with us this evening. You're going to drop some knowledge, some Black history knowledge on us today.
Oh, yes. As I say, every week and every day is Black History Day. And just want to let everyone know that we're talking about so much in the news today. And I wanted to just share something about the COVID-19. And I understand and see just every week about how we're dealing with this COVID-19. And they're talking about the blood issue, and if we can get people to donate more blood and extract the plasma out of that. Well, I wanted to do some research to let our children know, as well as young at heart, that we have a lot to thank in terms of looking at Dr. Charles Drew. And because of his dedication to learning more about blood transfusion, we are at the point now where we're understanding more about how to save lives. So just to share with you for a quick minute, and I'm just so happy that we have the beautiful and informative guests on the show today. And thank you, and Brother Edward, for giving me the opportunity to speak before our beautiful community. First of all, Dr. Charles Drew was born in Washington, D.C. on June the 3rd, 1904. He was best known for research in the storage of blood and large-scale blood banks. And we'll get into that a little bit more because, as I said earlier, we are very thankful for the research that he did in terms of helping people to understand the importance of donating blood. And because of that, he started out looking at things. When he was in high school, fate touched his family deeply. His sister died from tuberculosis, and that made him more interested in going into medicine to try to help humanity. So when he started out, he attended first a college in Canada, McGill University. And that was because he was not given the opportunities in America at that time to really explore his gifts and talents. When he attended the college at McGill in Canada, he drew attention to how he was able to start looking at blood and how to be able to extract the plasma from the blood. And during a war, and I want our children to read more about Dr. Drew, during the war between Germany and England at that particular time, they needed more blood plasma to save the troops. Well, Dr. Drew wanted to make a difference, and he urged them to allow him to send blood. And this was based on him also being part of the Red Cross. So when they started sending blood over there, unlike in previous times, Dr. Drew, they were doing things where one person to another would give a transfusion. And that wasn't working because many died as a result of that. So he wanted to look at a new way of doing that and also preserving the plasma, wherein if we're taken maybe 2 or 3 days, the blood was no good, the plasma was no good. And through research, he found out that the plasma was the thing that would really preserve on a trip like going to maybe England. One thing Dr. Drew did not approve of at that time, while a war was going on, and Black soldiers wanted to enroll and they wanted to make a difference in giving blood. But because of segregation and discrimination, the medical field looked at him as saying, we'll have one area where Blacks give blood to Blacks and whites give blood to whites. Well, that didn't work. And he knew from all of the research that he had studied and had done that it was no difference between the blood, only the blood types, AB, A, B, and O. So he withdrew. He resigned from the American Red Cross Association. And he went back to Howard University and started there as a professor. And then he was elevated to the medical school, director over the medical school. And from there, he wanted to make a difference with getting more Black children or Black students as well interested in going into medicine. And he was very, very successful there. But as fate would have it, on April the 1st, 1950, he was only about 45 years of age at that time. What took place, he was headed to Tuskegee, Alabama. He was taking a group of students down there to study and also be a part of a convention. He had gone on his rounds at a hospital and he was quite supposedly sleepy. Well, the car hit a ditch and it rolled over, or a field. And unfortunately, the car rolled over on him. Reportedly, even when he was taken to the hospital, which was an all-white hospital, I understand from reading that they did their best, but because of the severity of his injuries, he did not survive. But his works continue to carry on. And I want to just kind of sidetrack and say I'm very, very proud of Dr. Winston McIver, Sister April, because you have him on your show, and we've had him on the Whittemore Magazine, Facebook, and Our Power to explain certain medical issues that take place and to help our people and everyone in the community to understand, particularly since this is this COVID-19 and the simple steps that we are told to take: wearing a mask, washing our hands frequently, and also keeping social distancing. Well, Brother Edward went to the recreation center in Conway on, I think it was Friday. And to his surprise, he said he saw many, many people coming in for the testing as well as wearing masks. So we are very, very proud of him in our community. He's making a difference, and I pray that he will continue to help others to understand that. So parents, even though we are sheltered in, you can still go on your computer, which is the universal university, and learn with your children. And I have just a simple kit here that I like to use myself, even at my age, studying the human body. Did you know that just by handling and doing all of those positive things, learning about the small intestines, the skeletal part, we can get so much knowledge. And if our children can just begin to understand that this is very important for future generations, we will be happy to say that we have groomed another Dr. Charles Drew. Thank you so much for listening. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to let Sister April or Brother Edward know. God bless.
Do you need to complete your diploma or get your GED? Stop putting your future on hold. Contact the Horry County Adult Education Centers today. With 2 offices in Conway and Myrtle Beach, you'll be well on your way to a new career. The Conway Education Center is at 843-488-6200, or the Myrtle Beach Family Learning Center is at 843-839-5400. You can also visit the website at hcae.horrycountyschools.net. Heating unit not working? Need answers right away? Call Quick Services Heating and Air Conditioning for comfort in a hurry. Quick Services Heating and Air LLC is the right choice for you. Call Kenya and Nina Keith at 843-488-1492. Residential or commercial financing available. You can also visit their website at www.quickserviceshvac.com. That's KWIK serviceshvac.com. Quick Services Heating and Air LLC, the right choice for you. Serving Horry County for over 79 years, Palmetto Chevrolet in downtown Conway has just what you need to find new roads. Come through and browse, make your selection, and find new roads right away. Palmetto Chevrolet, 1122 4th Avenue, downtown Conway. You can also visit palmettochevrolet.com or call the service center at 843-248-4283. Palmetto Chevrolet, find new roads. Matthew and Beatrice Rue left a rich legacy of funeral home services in the capable hands of Atu and Tammy Williams. Ocean View Funeral Homes and Cremation Services, with 2 chapels serving the Horry County area. They offer full-service funeral and cremation services with no hidden fees. Call for details. The Conway Chapel is 843-248-5376. The Myrtle Beach Chapel is 843-916-8929. They offer affordable, professional, and caring full-service packages. Ocean View Funeral Homes and Cremation Services. And we're back. Thank you all so much for tuning in to the Whittemore Community Magazine Live. It was wonderful to have Sister Joella on with our Black History Moment. Last week, we learned about Harriet Tubman, and this week we got a great lesson about Dr. Charles Drew. So thank you so much. We really do appreciate that.
Charles Drew. So how many of you were aware of Charles Drew and his achievements? I'm sure Councilman Orton, but the rest of you don't know. Everybody's muted.
Oh yeah, everybody's. I had to mute everybody.
Okay.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dr. Charles Drew. I would say in the military, in the military, you have a laundry list of additional duties. One of my additional duties as a military officer was a human relations officer slash. We started from race relations, human relations, to cultural diversity. That was one of the questions on my pop quiz. Dr. Charles Drew and his contribution to World War I. He saved countless number of American soldiers through blood transfusion on the battlefield.
Well, okay, so you get an A for the
Yeah,
pop
all right,
quiz
thank you
today.
so much. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's get back to our conversation. Again, today we have some special guests talking with us about flood mitigation issues in Horry County, the plans, the resources, and the progress. And we've had a great discussion in the beginning of the program about the most impacted areas, some of the compounding issues that come along with the diminishing property due to the flooding. And I think now is a good time for us to kind of get into some of the comments and questions that are related to that portion of the discussion, because, there are a number of people who've posted some things, and we definitely want to acknowledge their interest in this particular topic. So, as we were talking about the solutions that are needed, you can't help talking about to talk about solutions without actually really getting to the heart of what could possibly be the cause of the continuous flooding. And that seems to be, one of the questions that's come up a lot, is what is actually causing this? So we have one viewer who's asking, do you believe that the flooding is due to climate change or to too much building on the waterways? Is there an issue with overdevelopment? What are some of your thoughts as far as in a nutshell, what you think the actual problem is? And I believe Kevin might have touched upon this in the beginning, but what do you think it is?
All of the above.
Okay.
Every one of those variables have an effect. Okay. I know April can speak better to the subject, but definitely our change in climate. We're getting stronger storms, more frequent storms. They seem to linger longer, producing a lot of water, and so therefore, and then you have the development. You don't have the vegetation and the trees that are slowing the water down. Building, water moves much faster across concrete than it does a forestry area with trees and vegetations to absorb and slow that water down.
Well, okay, this is to bring you this. Thank you for your comments, but also saying the science of it. We are over the last 20 years. There's been a change in the climate. We all have to agree to that, because as you said, the storms are more intense. Even just say normal rain now, you have a more intensified rain. Within a matter of minutes, you have about visibility of water on the streets. So there is something going on in the climate, and there's been a change in the climate. We're all agree with that because of global warming. Now, of course, and I hear this a great deal. And we get these questions all the time: emails, telephone calls. Those developers come in here. All they do is they submit a plan, or we kind of plan the zoning, just rubber stamp it, and go to council approve of it. That is not the way the process works. I mean, it's a very methodical process when you're dealing with planning and zoning. I mean, they go through, wetlands is through Army Corps of Engineers, but it is a very methodical process. They look at flow of water, elevations, and make sure that when those planned developments, when they have a development that is better off than before you did development. And April or Lyra can attest to that. We just recently had about 7 months ago, April, we had at least 4 or 5 meetings with a developer. We use what the approach now we use is smart development. You bring in the community, you bring in a developer, you sit down and discuss these issues. You look at the science, you look at the flow of water, the history of that location, how water flows, how does that going to impact when you bring in, say, develop 200 or 300 houses? How does that going to impact that community? Okay, the downstream because because of the new requirements, your houses are much elevated from say a house built 20 years ago. So that will impact someone downstream. So therefore, we make sure that when the developer comes in, all that information is available to the public. We hold public meetings, and it's accountability, and we make sure that there's no one impacted from downstream for flooding. And from my perspective, that because of the processes that we use for development as we move forward.
Yeah, and I mean, I can piggyback on a lot of what you're saying, Councilman Bellamy. Part of it is that we didn't really have very strong floodplain standards just a few years ago. So we have done a really good job at trying to adjust some of our codes and ordinances based on past events that have happened in the last 5 years. So we're not really seeing the benefits of that quite yet. Some of us are, but not all of us. Some of these existing communities that were built prior to those standards are really where we're seeing a lot of the impacts. And a lot of these areas, depending on your source of flooding, again, if this is more of a riverine waterway issue, less of a flash flood. But for these waterway or riverine areas, they were all built at a much lower elevation. And in many cases, they were built in areas that wouldn't necessarily be conducive to development. So we're seeing a lot of impacts in those areas. And it's a really tough balance because we're very flat, we're a coastal plain, we're already very vulnerable to hurricanes. We're among the top 5 hazardous counties for hurricanes. So they often talk about Tornado Alley. We're Hurricane Alley. So that's really good to think about it that way. And you're really trying to do the best you can and make the best decisions you can with the information that you have. But quite frankly, it's an art based off of science, right? You can't possibly factor in every variable and every event. And each flood event is different from the last flood event. After Matthew, I'm sure you guys can all attest that was a historical flood, and we'll never see anything like that ever again, right? And here we had Hurricane Florence that was almost 3.5 feet higher. So the reality is that most of the data that we use is a 20-year historical trend. That's what we model all of our calculations off of, and we do it with as many variables as we can. But it's an art. And so the best thing to do is really limit development in these high-risk areas. If you live in one of these high-risk areas, you need to protect yourself and mitigate yourself, flood insurance, elevation, or buyout. And then really just, as far as flash flooding, maintaining the stormwater systems. That's going to be really, really critical. I definitely think future land use has an impact on flooding. I see it every day, despite all of our best efforts and despite us upgrading those ordinances and standards. So, for example, we could do more low impact development. We could do more conservation subdivisions and really try to look at more cumulative effects. For example, we could use innovative products to help curb some of the impervious surfaces that we're adding. We could put in more stricter regulations around protecting our tree canopy for the sole purpose of flood mitigation. And, obviously partnering, as I mentioned earlier, with stakeholders that are involved in conservation. So we're protecting critical uplands that really do provide a tremendous value to us for our public safeguard and obviously protecting the capital investments we've already invested. So there's a lot of things we can do. And that kind of is the reason why Horry County Rising was so real clear about what could be in a good flood plan, right? What are some of the things that we could all look at and review and fully consider? And what type of capital investments will we save if we were to implement those solutions? And those are all the kind of decisions that need to be made. One of the things that I've seen through my work is that not one solution fits all, right? What works in Saucasy along the ICW is going to look very different than what works in a community like Bucksport.
Right.
You know, lots of the Myrtle Beach families in Saucasy, and I know, you know, at least 3 dozen of them, they all want buyouts. But when I go to communities like Bucksport and I speak with the families there, they have a real long cultural connection to their land, and they're not interested in buyouts. You know, they would rather do an elevation. So we really need to make sure that whatever solutions we are propelling forward, that those are the solutions that are driven by the community. Those are solutions that the community has asked for. And I think the county staff is really doing, as well as Councilman Bellamy, is really doing all we can to connect with the community, do community outreach, and figure out what works in these areas. But it all goes back to that's what could be in a good flood plan. And it also goes back to that we're going to have some unmet needs, and we're going to have to do more to make sure we get the resources and funding we need to do all the projects that we want. I look at these projects in the area, and in order to do a really aggressive project to get families out of harm's way, it's going to cost up to $15 million in some of these most impacted, distressed communities in our county alone. So where are we going to get the funding? Because, you know, HUD is only so much money. So it's really critical that we have folks reach out to their elected leaders and also elect champions like Councilman Bellamy to office who are passionate about these issues, who are really true public servants and want to serve their constituents and do all we can to help our businesses and families rebound much quicker and not have as much catastrophic damages.
And I hear what you're saying, April, but I guess my question would be, what is the feasibility of, an elevation project happening for a city or town like Bucksport, if we're talking the lack of resources and also how much time, how much time would it take for that particular type of an elevation project to be completed? And then from the standpoint of the Bucksport community, do you all believe that this is the type of information that's being communicated to your community so that people can make an informed decision about what they want to do? I understand the legacy principles, but, when I hear everything that April has explained, it just sounds like to me that the community is always going to be at a loss because it can't catch up. So, what happens at this point? What do people need to really understand? And is everyone who's involved with the decision making really coming to the table to explain these things to the community?
Yeah,
that's what
Betty wants to speak. Hold on a second. Hold on a second. Betty has not said anything.
Let Betty speak.
Let Betty speak.
That goes back to, I know we're in the pandemic right now, but we need to get our communities together to find out what are their needs, and get all these different organizations together here to listen, to see what our community want or well as they need. We just need to get our community together and see if elevation is what they need. I know funding is the key, but we also got to educate our community. We got to educate them and let them know what's going on, because a lot of them don't know what's going on.
It's important when we have, and we have made several, and I thank Ms. Goss there for coordinating all the meetings that we've been having at the Bucksport community and bringing them on board on various different programs, working with FEMA, working with HUD, South Carolina Disaster Relief, various different churches and organizations. I think that's important. A very good, valid point, Ms. Goss, is that for the elevation, is that, I'll give you an example, is that it's a house right there on Old Bellamy Drive. That house was replaced with the new elevation. It's probably up about what, 48 feet, about 48 inches.
Mhm.
Yes,
Yes.
about 40. And then there's one on Bucksport Road, probably about 48 inches. So we are implementing as soon as we, the county with the state and with through Army Corps of Engineers with FEMA, as April and Leary was saying, the science. Since we have that information available, lessons learned, we implement that as quickly as possible and make those changes. Because as you're saying is that, as April was saying, is that each storm is different, each flood is different. So we're constantly updating our information, updating policies and procedures. So it's a fluid situation.
Let me piggyback on what Betty said about people coming together to coordinate a forum. You've got a basic clerical community there. Okay, I don't know to what degree they're involved there, but surely they can have an impact in terms of participation, in terms of developing strategies. When you have these meetings at the at when it used to be at Fraser Center, now it's going to be like what we're doing now. But let's not leave. Let's not. We need to push them a little better. We need to push them further to make sure that they're involved. Okay, because they have a lot to offer. And secondly, this part about our elevating our properties, and also selling our properties. The nobody's talking about selling down at the marina. They're steadily building up. My understanding.
Well,
so
True. Okay.
well, the answer about the we from day one when I took office in Bucksport community, the Bucksport resoundingly, 100% unanimously, they were not interested in buyouts. Okay, so I never pursued that with the Bucksport community. As April Lear said, each community has different needs. They have their different philosophical viewpoints on their community. They have a legacy there that date back to the early 1800s. They like to maintain that historical community. So that was never one of my approaches to for a buyout program because they're not interested in that. What we're interested in doing is elevation, repairs, replacement, and provide those type of services for the Bucksport community.
Yeah.
Let me say this.
Let's get Kevin. Yeah.
As president of the Association of Betterment of Bucksport, that's one of our missions. That's part of our mission statement. Matter of fact, we're having a meeting this month on the 30th at the Fraser Center to address just the issues that we're talking about today. But let me add to this. Buyout is just one of the tools in the toolbox to help mitigate. But when you're right, when we educate people about all the variables about that, for example, most people don't know that buyout is a 5-stage plan. Every stage has 3 to 18 months on each stage. The average buyout time is 5 years. Now, we need the most expedient and direct programs to alleviate the problems in our community. So and another thing that we have to consider, Bucksport is because of the income levels. You notice that there might be more housing geared towards the mobile home industry versus stick-built homes. Mm. Whenever this buyout program is administered, you get that house supposedly at market value. Okay, what's going to be the market value at the time of purchase on a house that's in a floodplain and it's a mobile home? Can you imagine trying to start your life over after waiting for 5 years with $5,000 if it's valued at that? So these are all things that is very valuable information that we to the community so that they can make informed decisions. And another thing that most people, I've not heard people talk about, we know about a process called redlining. Do you know that there's now a process called blue lining? And what blue lining is never before in the history has a monetary institution used catastrophes as part of its structure in lending money, as the banks are trying to put together now. With blue lining, they're targeting areas that have been consistent flood areas, and the values of those homes can go to zero overnight. See, the New York Times published this article almost a year ago. These are things that, you know, exacerbate the problem in low income and minority communities. So yes, very much informed people make better decisions.
Okay, well, I think we can just about skip this discussion on buyout since Orton has already, given us conveyed us information about. Yeah, So everybody think about another option here, but
Well, it's just,
again,
and it's easier said than done. It's just, you say buyout, and I think that you have to take that on a case by case basis, and it depends on everybody's individual situation. Nobody is gonna.
It's
It's not a one size fits all.
And I'll put it say about that. We can move on by about. It's at 75% value because FEMA, HUD, Housing and Development, and then what we're requesting, through the state. We are requesting for a 25% match from the state, so that's still pending. Speaking of that, it's called the Stratford Act. So if you're call your congressman, your U.S. senator, call them to increase that, you can go easily because it's a federal statute. You can go from 75 to 100%. So let's contact our congressman, Congressman Rice, Senator Graham. Senator Tim Scott, and tell them that
already made a statement.
5%, go to 100.
What was their statement, Brother Edward? Somebody asked about that. I'm going through the thread now.
Mr. Graham has already made a statement. Said, look, move out. The government can't keep lending you money after you've had been flooded once. Now you don't have enough sense to want to move or something. So Lindsey Graham, that was part of his statement. It's not verbatim what I'm saying, but that was he was implying anyway. That you have no business just staying there. You've been flooded twice. What are you staying around? The government can't keep lending you money. That was basically what he was saying.
Well, I haven't seen his state.
And that's what the FEMA program, the buyout program, is designed to do, is to kind of reduce the amount of money that is being spent. Don't misunderstand me. It's a program that can be a good program for those who can, endure the time frame that it takes to go through that program, that is willing to relocate. Like April said earlier, we are a very attached community, family oriented. So people are less, apt to wanting to leave the area that most of their ancestry has been a part of.
And financially, they may not be able to do it, period. Mm-hmm.
Right. Again, I say, Councilman Orton has already said that the survey indicated that nobody wants to buy out. Okay, so I think this is kind of like new for us. I really believe that. Okay, I think we can move on to another part or something. Okay. April, do you have any more questions from our viewers?
Yeah, I want to go into the comment thread and let's see what our viewers are saying since they've been so gracious to stick around with us for over an hour now. All right, so Priscilla Fuller asks, since these areas such as Bucksport flood frequently, what is the county and state doing to address the issue to prevent the flooding and reduce the effect it has on families in the area? And I guess that would be kind of directed towards Orton, Councilman Bellamy. As far as the county and state level, is there something concrete that people can actually see in terms of what the county and the state is doing, in addition to the federal
for the state, the governor appointed the Suffolk Flood Commission. He came out with this. It's April here is aware of that. The studies on that, and what we're doing locally, as I said, is that some of the flood mitigation are things that we have talked about earlier today. On this talk show, and for us at our local level, and to ensure that when you have disasters like that, and look at prevention strategies, and working with stormwater drainage, what we're doing at the local level, and also we're looking at studies from the Army Corps of Engineers, and we'll also be following up with the stormwater drainage, Tom Ross and his staff, and looking at some of the things we discussed tonight and more strategies and ways we can implement changes. As I said, this is a fluid situation. We're constantly update things and as information becomes available.
Okay. There's a question about the ongoing flood issue as it relates to development by Grand Strand Water and Sewer. Do you think that that's had any impact on what has happened in the area? And also,
Okay.
yeah, you want to answer that, and I'll go to second part.
Yeah, Grand Strand Water and Sewer, what their development is, and when I first took office, there was so much rumor innuendos out there. They were going to build a golf course. They were going to build a housing. They were going to build a subdivision and down on the riverfront. Okay, what they're building is an industrial park for manufacturing boats. Okay, I've looked at the plans. This plan's been in the works for probably since back 2012. Okay, and they just built a road in there, a direct access road to their property. So that way it would alleviate from having property for equipment, trucks coming directly down Bucksport Road. That traffic is now be diverted over to a specific road that's dedicated directly to the marina. And I've reviewed their plans. In fact, we've had Grand Strand Water and Sewer to come out to one of our community meetings. And they provided all the plans and transparency with everyone in the community to address their concerns, the aromas, and information about their development down on the waterfront. So it's going to be an industrial park. It's not a residential subdivision they're going to build. They're not in the business of doing that.
Okay,
Yeah, I think it's more, the best way to look at it is like the cumulative effect of future land use, right? So any one particular subdivision that's close by you isn't going to flood you with the way the regulations are now. In fact, we see a lot of times new development improving, especially around flash flooding. It's the cumulative effects, right? So it's, thousands of different residential subdivisions over a very short period of time. So the best thing that we can do is do more low impact development. Those are what the experts suggest that we do. Those are the types of sustainable development options that we need to consider and start to fully implement. And then again, limit future land use in high risk areas or nearby communities that flood, right? Because we don't want to compound things. So, it might look much like an overlay map where it's a map that sits on top of, and we identify areas that are like E zones or things like that, where we say, this community like Bucksport is really impacted by flooding. Let's try to create some zones to try to give you more buffers in those areas. And any development that we do is low impact, right? And there's all different types of criteria that defines what a low impact development project is. So those are the kinds of things that could be in a plan that we really need to start considering. And I think the county is moving toward that direction with the assistance of the planning department staff.
Now, with new development, we're doing more, as developers come in, we're doing more green space, more buffer zones. Mm-hmm. So we're expanding that. Now, ideal situation would be is that where we wouldn't have to do a great deal of excavation on projects. Unfortunately, Horry County is flat. So that's the problem. And we have to build up areas. And that when you do that, you remove the natural vegetation, then you have to replant it. But ideal situation would be ecological development, okay? Where you go in and you laser identify area, and it's on a grid, and you have, say, 100 houses, and you only remove, if you build a 2,000 square, say 2,000 square foot house, you only remove vegetation in that specific area and laser in and then that vegetation will remain in place. But that'd be an ideal situation. That'd be great. We could do that. Okay, but we can't because of the elevation of land. Things that we can do, as April was saying, not April T. Okay, was that we're looking at more buffer zones, more green space, more greenery, and look at instead of using concrete, use some other kind of materials. Asphalt, use some other kind of materials. Those are some of the things that we could do to impervious surface, things of that nature.
Has there been an environmental impact study of any sort done in this particular area as well? There's a question about whether or not those studies have happened.
They're in the process of doing a PD watershed study, which has never been done before. There are numerous drainage studies that have been done in Horry County before. The important thing to know is that our watershed is like the second to third largest on the East Coast. It's massive. We have 5 major rivers that all drain into Winyah Bay that come through Horry County or affect Horry County. So the drainage basin is so big, it's very difficult to do studies on the scale and the scope that we need to. And again, once you do a study, things change, the land change, it becomes more developed over time. So as soon as you get the data is different. We do look at impervious surface cover as well locally. The county spends a lot of money actually to do a review every 5 years. We're due for a review, so we should get that. We are one of the fastest growing counties in South Carolina, which means we're off the chart in terms of how much land we have changed, how much upland and wetland forest we have lost, and how much impervious surfaces we have had. And so, yes, that is going to affect flooding. We're the highest county in all of those categories. So we do need to do a better job, particularly because we're so vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
And just to bring up on the PD watershed study, is that I did talk with Mr. Duncan. I was talking about disaster relief. They have received the study. They're going through and reviewing it. They're doing a summary. As soon as that study is released, we'll provide you copies of it.
Fantastic.
All right. Yeah. I'm going to try to condense some of the questions into one so that we can get on with the conversation. There's a couple of questions that come in about, pretty much what is exacerbating the problems, releasing the dams and also storm drains that need to be cleaned. Would this help with, as far as the dams are concerned, one person pretty much questions whether or not that's something that needs to be dealt with before residents can figure out what to do on their end. And then as far as the storm drains, it would cleaning those out, make the water flow better.
Mr. Bellamy's itching to answer that damn problem. So go ahead.
I'm an expert on Blue Ridge Falls now. I've never been there. I'm looking forward to going there. I've received about 100 emails on Blue Ridge Falls Dam in Anson and Richmond County. And one night, I think about 10:30 at night, I must have received about 50 emails in a matter of seconds, because someone had posted on Facebook that Blue Ridge Falls is at it again. They're out there releasing all this water and it's flooding the Bucksport. That's not true. What happens is that they have overflow. They don't have any gates. The water it overflows, and it flows naturally from Yadkin River into the Great PD into Horry County. Okay, now I would implore everyone on tomorrow night at 6 p.m. We're having the experts from Blue Ridge Falls. We'll be doing a presentation at Horry County Council. Please stay tuned because they have invaluable information about the operation there, hydroelectric dam, their dam system. Okay, please everyone tune into that and you become well versed and knowledgeable because there's 5 dams in that area. Upstream there's Charlotte, and then flows south from there. But that is not causing the problem. Now, to answer your question, is that we are conducting studies on the Great PD, Little PD, and the Waccamaw River. In fact, we already been out the Savannah Bluff, Pitch Landing, and down in Bucksport. I was down at the marina last week asking questions about debris, trees, things of that nature. We'll be going out on the river. In fact, I'll be out there personally. We're gonna do a recon of the river, the three rivers, and we'll have it in GPS grid coordinates and identify those locations. And we'll request for funding through Congressman Tom Rice's office to remove the debris and trees from the river. And additionally, we've been in contact with Marion County because we also been in contact with Anson and Richmond County through stormwater drainage here. And they've been because as April O'Leary stated that the water flows downstream from those 5 rivers. Okay, so we have to be in direct communication with our North Carolina counterpart. Okay, so we'll be working with North Carolina. We'll be working in Marion County and in Florence County in that. And I would say probably next 2 weeks, we will be out on the rivers, looking at those locations and providing that real-time information so we can request funding to remove the debris from the river. And that does cause problems because I talked to several people at Savannah Bluff when they got out there fishing. They do see it there down at the Waccamaw, down at the Bucksport area, and on the Great P and Little PD River. And the same thing in Marion County, up in the Nichols area. Yes, so we'll definitely be doing that. And as soon as we get the report, that'll be
forget about Nichols, man.
to the public. Say again?
You can forget about Nichols. I mean, it's shot, man. Nobody's coming back there again. But look, I'm not. I'm not trying to be comedic about that.
Right.
But what about? Has anyone ever, Councilman Norton? Has anyone at the council ever brought up the idea of providing a dam somewhere as one of the factors for mitigating flood in the airport? I mean, at Bucksport.
No, they looked at about over 18 months ago. They looked at what was that Bull Creek Road, for us maybe doing some elevation there.
Yeah.
But that's a study that was forwarded to the Army Corps of Engineers because of the virus. We haven't received a response back.
Yeah, because if you get the appropriate private entity, you can think about generating electricity somewhere down there. A small portion that could be just for Bucksport. Just a thought.
Okay.
From an engineer's mind. Mhm.
Oh, engineer. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just a thought.
One other question. We've of course been heavily focused on Bucksport this evening, but one person has sent in questions about other areas that flood in Horry County, particularly Highway 90. What efforts have been made to even address those issues?
Well, it's not only just this Bucksport. I gave you the 3 hotspot, 4 hotspot area. Mm-hmm. We're looking at the entire county for its flooding and coming up with strategies for prevention, mitigation. That's all part of our resiliency plan. So you have a Highway 9 over on the Waccamaw River, Highway 905, Red Bluff communities, Loris. Yes.
Myrtle Beach.
Yeah.
So I can see here Rosewood. I think Rosewood. Yeah, Rosewood. Yeah.
I guess there just seems to be some chronic issues. Every time you see anything in the media about flooding, it always focuses on particular areas. So maybe people aren't aware that other areas flood as much. But one thing that we have learned is that yes, we do have a very serious problem in Horry County, and there's no quick fix. There's no one size fits all. And there's I'm gonna make a comment about a question that was posed, and then we're going to kind of go to some closing remarks. But there's one person in the stream who says, what about these people who are elderly, not willing to move, have grown up, particularly in Bucksport, for example, all their lives, made their home there, not able to move because of finances. What are their options as of today? Someone else asked, what is the best option for Bucksport? I'm sure that question is the question all over Horry County. What is the best option for each community in Horry County? And it sounds like, again, there's no one size fits all. And that at one point that April made in pre-show discussions is that, really the communities need to come out with their concerns and lead the plans of their communities and lead the discussions of their community. So, I guess that is the Is that what you're imploring people to do, is to make sure that they show up where they need to show up to address their concerns, and also to, start planning at a community level?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's critical, right? Because
Very
the
much.
more we can provide input on what we want our community to be, the better the outcome, right? And, we had close to 60 homes demolished in my neighborhood. I didn't have any input on that. So naturally, it had a pretty devastating, profound effect on me, because every time I came home after being flooded, this neighbor was gone and this neighbor was gone, or this house was demolished. And it was really hard. And having small children, it was really hard.
Mm-hmm.
I think what would have worked better for me and families like me, or even, our entire community, is to have an opportunity to have input on that, understand that that's what's going to be happening, have a leadership role. And I think, the city's done a tremendous job in pulling us in and identifying, based on our concerns, that was a need. And now we have more public input. They've pulled us in on an engineered project that they're going to work on to help flooding the North Conway. So I think the more the community can engage, the better. And then join Horry County Rising on Facebook. We provide a forum to have these conversations where everybody's treated with respect and dignity, and we share resources together. And then obviously, making sure that you talk with your elected officials, and then vote for officials who are going to vote on flooding. One of the things that's made us really successful is that we really work hard with our elected and appointed officials to hear our concerns and to incorporate that input. It's really up to us. We can't blame anybody else. We need to be at the table, or we're going to be on the menu. So it's really critical that
like
we're
that.
all involved
Be at the
in this
table or be on the menu.
conversation and really form the future of our communities, particularly ones that have some other factors, right, that Kevin touched on. When he and I spoke, there's some secondary issues that are coming up as a result to a flood event. Those are all things that we can really prevent and mitigate that shouldn't be happening. So I think we can do a better job with a plan, and with additional resources. We need to fund flooding, not just after a disaster, but every year, because doing it disaster based is not working for our communities. We're becoming more vulnerable, more susceptible, and we're losing our financial viability. So that's not good for our economy and our communities as a whole.
Okay. Kevin, your final words.
With that being said, April, we need to be more proactive than reactive. And that's the reason that everyone needs to be involved. Every voice needs to be heard. And like April and Orton has alluded to, I've not found the elements of our local government not cooperative. I think they just want to hear our needs. And if we're not articulating that, then we make it difficult for them to address our problems. So with that being said, our mission in Bucksport and as the Association of the Betterment of Bucksport is to work with Orton Bellamy. He's been a friend of the community. I found him very receptive and open to every issue that concerns us. So let's continue to forge that relationship and meet the problems, not be reactive, but proactive of our community.
Councilman Bellamy.
All right, I guess as everyone stated earlier, said I'm retired. I guess I stay in the Army. I stay in the military too long. I look at you look at lessons learned. You plan the mission, you execute it. One of the three things you do is that prior planning makes proficient programs. So we're looking at preventive strategies here. And as April said, and also Kevin, this is a year-round project. We have to stay on, stay forward, stay focused. Not just because in a disaster, we learn from the disaster and plan for the next disaster. But it's not if, but when. And so therefore, in that interim, we have to look at strategies for prevention, and community involvement is very important. But it's because, as I said, when the funding becomes available in the month of August, we'll have a call meeting there in Bucksport. During the meeting, we'll bring out Sarpon Disaster Relief and give them an update and ask them what the criteria is, what's funding is coming to Bucksport, what type of service we're going to provide, and all. And then subsequent to that, and the next level of funding, next iteration of funding, we'll have another meeting, bring you out, bring you back up, bring you up to date, keep you up to speed on what's going on with his funding. Make sure you have application on time and all the criteria and documentation that you need to be successful and to make those corrections. And I'd like to thank everyone tonight. You guys have been phenomenal. Ed, April G, and Betty. And Betty Goss, let me talk about her a second, and Kevin. Those guys have been phenomenal. We talked about flooding for Bertha. In a matter of about 20 minutes, they notified me that it was flooding on Martin Luther Drive. Then, because we formed a committee, they're in Bucksport, infrastructure committee. We've had one of the residents was going out. He posted red flags on the road. And Betty immediately contacted the fire department. The fire department came out, put up signs. And in case of emergency, we already had a plan in place for extraction. Say anyone need to go to doctor, a hospital, emergency. That plan was in place in a matter of 20 minutes, thanks to Betty and Kevin and the community. What's the community and government, everybody working together collectively.
That's right.
Awesome.
Great job.
And of course, Brother Edward McQueen always gets the final say on our show every night or every Monday night.
But and that's unfortunate at this time because I really want to do a follow up on Kevin and Councilman Horton. And Kevin, I just want to commend the Bucksport community. Really, I mean, you all have been at it for a long time, man. A long time, many years. Since I've come back to the Carolina area, and I've seen that Bucksport is, with the resources that you do have, you're making very good use of that. I can name some of the things that go on about the keeping of the cemeteries there up to date. I know recently you and Miss Mary Owens is involved, and she's doing a good chronology of Bucksport history about it.
Absolutely.
And we're going to feature her on here pretty soon.
Mm-hmm.
And how you're letting the world know about the slave graves that I guess there were slave graves at the Bucksport cemetery that you found. So I just want to commend you guys and let you know that what you're doing and what you have been doing is not in vain. You got some very productive people in Bucksport. I just want to let you know that. And while we're at this, I have to give a shout out to Miss Cret Bellamy. She just turned 96. Well, she will on the 4th.
Yeah.
96 years old.
96 years
The
young.
14th, which is tomorrow, I believe. And shout out to her family. I mean, they set her up beautifully. People came by, blowing their horns in the cars, stopping by, and because of the virus, they didn't get out of the cars.
Mm-hmm.
And my understanding is that there were over 100 cars that passed by and just shouted to her, keep going, Godspeed. And we just didn't have time to upload. I wanted to upload the video, but she sang a song for me. I videotaped it.
Wow. Aren't you special?
Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna do that maybe the next time. Okay, really the next time, and she can sing, man. She can sing. Okay.
Awesome.
In fact, she did it at her last birthday party. But just want to throw a shout out to her and Godspeed and wish her 96 more. Okay.
Yes. Okay.
We have a lot of birthdays for our late 80s and 90-year-olds.
Yeah.
In the community. And let's see. I think Miss Rutilla Great has one coming up in a couple of weeks. Yeah, she'd be what, 97? Yeah, something like that.
I think 97.
Yeah. My auntie Myrtle Chestnut, her birthday is July 18th. She will be 85. So
85. Wow.
85. Ooh, I pray to live to see it. Mm-hmm, absolutely.
Yeah, you said Chestnut. She's from the Poplar community, Wampy area.
Lonnie Chestnut's wife.
Okay.
Right.
That's
His
what-
wife.
my people. I'm a chestnut.
Proper, Reverend Lonnie Chestnut.
Yeah, my mom was a chestnut.
He was my high school history teacher.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
He
That's what he
turned
said.
91. He turned 91 a
said
few weeks
that.
ago, or a few weeks
right.
ago.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Wow. So there's a lot of history, and
Yes.
you're gonna see in the magazine which is coming up. We're gonna probably send it on tonight or tomorrow. Orton did a phenomenal job at the community and law enforcement forum they had at Chesterfield. They had it on the outside, where Reverend J.R. Matthews is the pastor over
Right.
at
Yes.
Chesterfield.
Right. Yes.
And Orton gave a little history on the poplar, the ground that everybody was standing on, and that is
Wow.
it was back in 1926. I think you said you researched
Right. The first school was built in 1926. It was the Poplar Elementary Color School, the Poplar Junior High Color School, and the Poplar High School.
Amazing.
In 1926.
Wow.
Yeah.
Kevin,
So-
you're a history buff. I know this is making you tingle.
Oh, it really is. I wish we had more time.
We'll get to it one day.
yeah.
We'll get to it one
Yeah,
day.
we'll get to that one day. Okay?
Yeah,
Really.
absolutely. Yeah, well, this has been a fascinating program, really, and very informative.
Someone just texted me and said that don't forget Mrs. Lattimore.
Yes,
Mrs.
it's Latimer's birthday today. I
She's
believe.
90.
Yeah.
Yes.
How old is Miss Latimer?
Yeah, and
She's
she,
90.
I don't.
Is it 93? 90? Yeah.
I'm not sure, but if Marvin or Georgia want to,
Yeah, somebody text me or somebody let me know. Yeah.
That'd be great. So, but anyway, Miss Edna Lattimore is her birthday, 93 years old. I mean, look, somebody been doing something right.
She's 93. 93.
93.
Mhm.
That's a blessing. 93
Miss Edna Latimer.
Yeah, 93. And she had two guys like George and Marvin. I don't know, man. I don't know.
We already know.
I don't know, boy. I tell you.
I'm writing all these names down.
Write them down, April. That's some rich history there. I'm telling you.
Hey, 93.
93.
But
But
they're
yes,
some good brothers. Right? And they're doing a fantastic job over at keeping up the legacy of the funeral home. So,
yes. Well,
April.
yes, this was a phenomenal show. Kimberly Austin Wood, thank you so much. She says, I appreciate this so much, allowing us to join in. Yes, because it's about community. So we definitely needed the community to be a part of this discussion. And I know that on behalf of Brother Edward, we're very thankful that our guests took the time out of their Monday evening to be with us to, help educate the community. So thank you so much. Ladies first, April Thomas O'Leary, is it?
Yes.
Okay, I've only known the April Thomas part. That's what they were telling me. April Thomas. So Miss April Thomas O'Leary, thank you so much. Keep up the good work. Yes, and then of course, Kevin, miss you. We're gonna have you back. You've got a lot to talk about as far as Black Cemetery and all that. Yes, a lot of people want to hear about that. It's gonna be a great one.
Some phone calls.
Say that again. Yes.
Looking forward to hearing from Brother Kevin. I'll tell you. And give your mom, please give your mom my regards. She's right.
I will do. I think she's listening to us tonight. So she's heard you.
Right.
She is a very sweet lady. Really.
Yes.
Okay.
And then of course, Councilman Orton Bellamy.
Thank you very much.
Yes. Keep working for the people. They need you.
Yes.
Yay, Arton.
Yeah, thank you. Pleasure working with everyone.
Okay. Well, Brother Edward, if you don't have anything else, I think it's a wrap pretty much.
Okay.
It's a wrap.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Bye, April.
Have a good evening.
Arton. Bye, April.
Bye.
Thank you, guys.
Bye, April. Have a good one.
Bye.
All right.
Thank you for watching the Whittemore Community Magazine's Hour of Power Live on Facebook with your host, Edward